So the way we structured this meeting this morning was to start off with Mr. Jeff Benjamin, who is our Executive Director for Facility Services, who is giving a great presentation on some really important changes that are coming down the pike. He's going to start, and I've told him he can take however long it takes, and if he has questions, y'all are welcome to ask questions. He'll answer them to the best of his ability, which will be perfect, I'm sure. But we wanted to let you know that you can leave after this if you need to. I know a lot of you have other things to probably get to, but you are more than welcome to stay as well. We'd be happy for you to stay and hear what goes on in these building coordinator meetings. You probably interact with your building coordinator a lot, or you are the primary signatory or the CDA for your building. So does anybody have any questions before we start? We are videotaping this. We videotape all of our building coordinator meetings, and we're videotaping this one, and this one is particularly relevant because it will have the slideshow as well as the comments from Mr. Benjamin. So if you need to refer back to it, if you need to share it with colleagues. But I think if nobody has any questions, and like I said, you're welcome to stay for the full 2 hours. I leave that up to you. But if you do need to leave, we won't be offended or insulted and wonder, why are they leaving? They're leaving us. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get started, and let me go ahead and introduce Jeff.
So forgive me, I don't have a lapel mic, and so I'm going to be out of my element. I like to walk around and move my hands, and I'm going to have to stand here and push buttons. So no problem, no problem. It's just a little bit different. Now I'm going to be left-handed, so it's going to be even more difficult. Anyway, I'm kidding.
Make me feel really good.
Yeah, thanks for coming out this morning. I hope it wasn't just for this because, that means a lot of pressure, right? I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we talked about at the last quarterly meeting and our strategic approach to work order management. Again, I'm Jeff Benjamin. I'm Executive Director of Facility Services. I know some of you, not all of you. So if you're wondering what I'm responsible for, it's basically everything but planning and capital construction. Everything in between kind of falls under me. So you have pest control issues, custodial issues, general maintenance issues, something breaks, you need to get it fixed, hot and cold calls, your room's too hot or too cold, trying to think, landscaping, the flowers don't look good, or the turf's not mowed, you don't have power, that's Carl, that's not me, I'm just kidding. So some of the folks that work for me, Jerry Bogna, I'm sure you probably know, Mike Wheeler, Carl Kobeck. See who else is here that works for me. Nobody's out here sucking up to the boss, huh? Okay. Liliana Simmons works for me. She's probably too busy to come over. And Juju Zabdawi, one of the new things we started this year was minor projects. Anything less than $1 million that's still a construction project is under my group now as well. So quite a span of control there. And what we've been looking at is how we can more strategically employ the limited resources we have. So when I say limited resources, I'm talking about we only have a certain amount of money to fix stuff, and we only have a certain number of people to fix stuff, which means a certain number of hours in the day. I tell my folks that, we're only working half days as it is, 6 to 6, but I got to give them that other half off for their family and to get some sleep. So. Nobody got that joke. Carl did. He's heard it before. Anyway, so we really have to think about how we're doing things in a smarter, more deliberate way. One of the current issues we have is we get a phone call in to fix it or an email in to fix it and say, hey, this is broken. And depending upon how loud the phone call is or how high-ranking the individual is in the organization sometimes. No, not that we show favoritism to the president, but, let's face it, the president's office isn't hot. We're going to fix it. And we kind of deal with things first come, first serve in a lot of ways. We don't have a well-thought-out system of how we classify work, how we prioritize work, and how we execute work. It's kind of catch as catch can. I'm not saying it's that disordered, but in a lot of ways it is. It just depends. So We're trying to address that. We're also trying to manage expectations, right? So we get a call in from a department that they want to have something done, like they want to have an electrical outlet installed in a room. Well, to the person who wants the electrical outlet installed in the room, it's not a big deal, right? It's just an electrical outlet. We have those in our house. We do those things all the time. It's not a big deal. Well, when you do it on the industrial scale, there's a number of things that go into determining whether we can just put an outlet in. I'm not an electrical engineer, so forgive me if I misquote things that I've heard, but you put an outlet in, and now you don't have room on the panel that supports that area of the building. So now you have to increase the size of that panel so you can put the outlet in. Well, that exponentially increases the size of the project. Then you determine, well, hey, guess what? We don't have enough service to that building to support an additional panel. So now you got to, add transformers and everything else, and then you got to do coordination studies to make sure that anytime you have a fault on that outlet, it doesn't trip the whole building off, right? Like we had over at Technology the other day. A little small minor error tripped the whole building off. So there's a lot that goes into those types of things, and we need to do a good job of managing expectations and letting people know, yeah, this is an outlet, and normally this would just be a really quick fix, but hey, guess what? It's now a project, and that 30-day timeline that we try to adhere to and getting stuff done like that is going to take a lot more, because now we have to go out and hire an electrical engineer, we have to hire a contractor, and we have to do a lot more work, and it's going to have a lot more money involved, and we're going to have to program for that money. So, now my work order is showing that, well, this work order has been open for 2 years. Well, and sometimes I'm exaggerating there, but the customer's like, I just wanted an outlet. So we want to make sure that we're communicating better, managing expectations, classifying work, so when we get a situation like that, it doesn't remain as a routine work order. It becomes a project, and we classify it as a project instead of carrying all these open work orders. And if you remember back, if you were here at the other quarterly meeting, I get about 45,000 work orders a year. It's a tremendous number of work orders that come in for different things. And so as this backlog grows, it just becomes this insurmountable effort that we have a hard time managing. So we're trying to find better ways to manage it, classify it, and manage our clients' expectations. So first things first, we're going to look at the work order process. At the quarterly meeting, we talked about all the different kinds of work that we do, all the different types of work orders, projects, things like that. I'm not going to go over that again. I'm going to focus just on the work order process and operations and maintenance. So begin with establishing some ground rules. We wanted to develop some common definitions, which we did. We rolled those out. Develop clear processes and timelines. We talked about those. Establish metrics to track the performance. That's kind of an internal piece, but we talked about what those metrics might look like, and I'll talk about those today. And then prioritize efforts strategically to maximize our facility investment. Again, I have 14.5 million gross square feet of campus. I have the main campus here, Sugar Land, Katy, Coastal Center, and I think there's someplace in Fort Bend that falls underneath it. So you can imagine the size and scale of the problem. 160 some buildings, 50,000 people almost every day come to the campus. So it's a small city, right? So you can imagine there's a lot to do, a lot to keep on top of, and this is going to hopefully help us do that a lot better. And then the goal is today to update you on what our efforts are and introduce in our rollout plan for the new classification system. And it's not, when I say new, it's not completely and entirely new. So here's the background. Why are we doing this? I went back to 2015. It's probably the last year that we have really good data on that I can mine. We average about 4,300 work orders a month. Like I said, around 45,000 a year. Right now, 56% of those break out as corrective, so that's stuff that's broken that we need to fix. 44% are preventive, which is I'm doing work to make sure that doesn't break. That's a really terrible number. It should be in the area of 80%, 85%. And why should it be there? Well, because the next two bullets a corrective work order takes, on average, based on the data we have, about 4.4 hours of time, of labor, and about $287 to fix, right? So in order to keep up with just that rate, I would have to have 74 people full-time devoted to corrective maintenance, and they would have to have an 85% productivity rate to accomplish that work, right? So that's a lot of people. I don't have that many people. In the grand scheme of things, I have about 100 folks full-time doing corrective and preventive maintenance. So you can see stuff gets broken and it doesn't get fixed because I don't have the people to get everything fixed. So then it gets deferred and rolled over and carried. So it's not a good situation. On the other hand, preventive maintenance on average takes about 1.6 hours and costs about $70 a work order, and equates to about having 21 people with that same productivity rate. So you can see the benefits of doing more preventive maintenance as opposed to corrective maintenance. I don't think that's a shocker to anybody here, right? I mean, that's makes sense, right? So couple that with our estimated annual spend of about $10 million. That's about 68 cents per gross square foot I have to maintain stuff. So it makes a lot more sense to do more preventive maintenance than corrective maintenance in the strategic long-term view, because one, I don't have a lot of money, I don't have a lot of people, and second, for every dollar that I spend on the stewardship of a building, so if I got a new building and I keep it up to a good condition through preventive maintenance, I can avoid $4 or more in capital investment down the road. So if I don't spend preventive maintenance in that first 5 or 10 years of that building's life, that next 10 years, I'm going to spend 4 to 10 times as much as I would have keeping it where it was, doing preventive maintenance. So it's just a good stewardship of the funds that we have. That's why we're looking at this. Currently, the process is this. Somebody calls into the call center, tells what the problem is, and then it gets sent over to the shop that is responsible for it. So if you call in and you say, hey, I don't have power in my room, the call center then sends a note over to Carl's shop, and Carl sends somebody out to look at it. Pretty simple, right? That doesn't matter if it's, I mean, there's some discretion in there in terms of if we know up front that it's a big issue and it's going to be a project, then we put it in as a project. But sometimes this stuff comes over and it's just a simple routine work request, and it goes to the shop first, and there's no screening process. And so somebody goes out, looks at it and says, nope, I'm not going to be able to get this done. It's going to be way too much time and money for the shop to do. We need to make it a project. So it just kind of delays the process, takes time away from fixing and maintaining stuff, and we want to avoid that. So we also have a triage group. It's structured, but we don't really have a defined process for it right now. So a group of folks from facilities gets together, looks at the work orders, and kind of assigns it and divvies it up to whether it's minor in-house construction. Y'all remember Steve Wright? That group still exists, even though Steve is retired. They'll send the work to him, over to the shops, to the planning group for planning a project, or to the minor construction group to execute as a project. It's just not a well-defined process right now, and we want to work on that. And then work orders, we typically fund them out of a number of different sources. If it's an E&G space, it kind of comes out of our HEAF impact funding or the shop's budgets for minor repairs and stuff. If you're an auxiliaries customer, it's a lot of pay-as-you-go type stuff. So campus rec, student housing, they have their own budgets to kind of fix and maintain stuff. And then when you kind of look at this whole thing, it really boils down to the fact that we need a strategic approach to how we classify, prioritize, and accomplish our work. So work order classification. Here's what we're proposing to roll out. Again, this is kind of a repetition of what we talked about last time. An emergency work order. So who can define an emergency?
Anything I need right now.
Yeah, James, exactly. And that's kind of how we treat it, right? It's like, man, James calls up and says, man, I got to have this right now. Well, it's just a door, James. We can fix it. You know, it doesn't, nope, I need it right. I'm just putting him on the spot. He doesn't really do that. But see what I'm saying? So we really need to have a good idea of what we define as an emergency, some ground rules. Now, I say ground rules because the first thing I've learned about being in the facilities business is you learn something new every day, right? So if we were to if I was to come up here and say, this is the definition of emergency and this is the only definition of emergency, I guarantee the facilities gods tomorrow would give me something I hadn't seen before that would be an emergency, that wasn't just under my previous definition. So that's why I say we're going to use these as ground rules. So damage to a facility. A tree falls on a building, a car drives through a building, fire, a gas leak, something that's going to affect the health or life safety of the public, students, faculty, staff, are possibly upset critical research or operations like, oh man, the satellite shut down because we don't have hot water. That never happens, right? That's kind of an emergency situation. Not really life safety, because nobody's going to die if we don't have hot water in the satellite. But man, where's Neil Hart? Is he here? Or Rosie? Yeah, they would be definitely upset if they couldn't operate their restaurants during lunchtime on a Friday afternoon or Wednesday afternoon or whatever, right? So it's kind of an emergency. So that's kind of the idea of the realm of emergency work orders. The expectation is that we will send somebody out immediately, dispatch somebody immediately. Doesn't mean they're going to get there 30 seconds later, because the person we dispatch might be across campus, or if the situation occurs at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, guess what? I don't have staff here at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. We just don't. So somebody's going to have to be called in. It's going to take a while for them to get the call, get their clothes on, come to campus, that type of thing. So if it's like a fire, no kidding, life emergency, UHPD, fire department, 911, all that stuff. We're talking facilities emergencies here, okay? So let's make sure we're clear on that as well. And then our goal is that within 2 hours of being notified of the emergency situation, we have it arrested. Doesn't mean we have it fixed. It means arrested. So like say there was a gas leak. We have the gas secured so that no further damage will occur, or if it's a pipe leak, we secure the water so that no further damage will occur. Doesn't mean we've fixed it and restored water, but we've gotten the situation to where it's not going to make something worse. That's the goal of responding to an emergency work order. Then, once we have that done, we assess the situation, determine what the best course of action is for fixing the problem. Is it going to be, oh, well, if we shut these valves off and turn the water back on, then we can, buy ourselves some time, or no, we have to keep working on this until it's completely fixed. Maybe it becomes an urgent work order or a routine work order. We reclassify, reassess after we've arrested the emergency situation. Once arrested, again, I talked about that. It maybe even we defer it, right? So we've had situations in the past where we had really old dormitories or residence halls where major catastrophic failures of the electrical distribution system occurred a month before we were about to close the place down. I mean, we're not going to fix that. We'll find a temporary way to supply power. We didn't make the residents move, and we made sure they had electricity, but we didn't replace the switchgear and the bus duct and everything else to restore it back to the way it was. It just didn't make economic sense to do that. So those are the kind of decisions we'll have to make. And then, I kind of threw a monetary number on there for kind of what is an emergency situation for if it's affecting the building. I threw $10,000. We can have a discussion about that, but that's kind of the threshold I have for determining whether it's a project or a work order, is that $10,000 threshold in materials. So, yeah, maybe I'm going to have to replace a big square of carpet or something. Is it inconvenient? Yes. Is it an emergency? No. But if I'm flooding that room out and the walls are going to get saturated with the water, and then I'm going to have to come in and rip the entire room out, that's a little bit different kind of situation. So, like I said, these are ground rules, not hard and fast, but it's a start. Any questions on emergencies? Okay. All right. Urgent work orders. So this is the things that are hey, this is extremely important. The work has a large impact on the operations, comfort, or mission of our customers. It doesn't necessarily endanger life or health. It's not going to impact the research. Like when I say impact the research, I mean, I'm saying it's not going to ruin the research. Impact might be, well, man, the researcher's going to be hot because, the room is 80 degrees and we can't get it cooled off, but it doesn't really have an impact on the research itself. Maybe that's not an emergency. Maybe it's urgent, but it's not an emergency. So those are the kind of things we're looking at there. Our goal is to respond as quickly as possible and try to correct the situation within 24 hours. Now, that may be a bridge too far because of the volume that we have, but it helps us to better classify the work in terms of, we got to get this fixed. We can't take this and just come out and look at it and walk away. We need to work it until it's completed, all right? And that's the kind of the idea behind the urgent work orders. Again, we'll address the issue and correct the underlying cause, and the goal is to have it closed out and completed within 7 days. But again, we want to respond as quickly as possible and get it resolved. I mean, when I say get it within 7 days, that's the metric. That's not the goal. The goal is to get it done as quickly as possible. The metric is if we're not getting it done in 7 days, why not, okay? And it could be that the parts aren't available and it takes a while to get the parts. There's a whole host of reasons why, but then now that we've got this classification system, I can start looking at those outliers and find out why we're not getting it done in 7 days and address those issues. Right now, we don't have the ability to do that, and that's why we're trying to take this data-centric approach to facilities management. So examples of this might be hot and cold calls. My room's too hot, my room's too cold, loss of water, hot water in a building, a power outage to a outlet or small portion of the building, whereas a complete outage of a building might be an emergency. Losing power to a single room, probably not an emergency unless there's something in that room like frozen goods, food for the restaurants or the dining facilities, or critical research, some class 4 microbe that will kill the campus if it thaws out. I don't know, but just some thoughts. Clogged toilets, minor leaks, pest control issues, spills or minor cleaning, things like that fall into kind of the urgent work order type thing. Any questions on that? Okay. Routine work orders. So this is going to be kind of where I would expect the majority of work orders to fall. This is for maintenance, repair, alteration, renovation that's required to maintain or return the building or a piece of equipment to its optimal design condition. It does not directly impact health, life, safety, research, or operations in the immediate sense. I mean, it may in the long term, but in the immediate sense, it doesn't. Again, we will respond as quickly as possible, and our goal is to complete all of these work orders within 30 days of receiving them. So you're saying, man, that's a lot of work orders. How are you going to get it all done in 30 days? Well, I'll get into that in a minute, but for now, let's just focus on the routine ones. We address the issue, we correct the underlying cause, and if possible, correct the underlying cause if possible. And the threshold for this is it going to be more than 32 labor hours or $10,000 in materials? If it is, then it's more than likely going to be a project, not a work order, right? So I'll go into some examples, but the idea is that instead of taking my shop's workforce that's supposed to be focused on maintenance and repair and having them do, kind of project level work, I keep them focused on the maintenance and repair, driving up the preventive maintenance percentages of the work we're doing, and execute the other stuff as projects. It doesn't mean the shop still won't do that project, but we'll take a much more a closer look at what their workload is and make sure they're the best source of that work instead of a contract. If it exceeds that threshold, that's where the triage committee comes in. This is going to be a formal committee. Membership on the committee is going to consist of our general maintenance, our operations folks, our planning folks, and our minor construction team. And they're going to assess the work orders and evaluate who's best equipped to execute that work. If it's a project, is it a project that requires planning design, or is it a project that just requires us to replace a piece of equipment? One for one. So those are the kind of decisions that will be made by the triage committee. Some examples of this kind of work, have a roof leak, I need to patch it. Oh, a window's broken, or cracked, I need to replace it. The carpet needs to be replaced, or the wall needs to be painted, or the door needs to be repaired. Sidewalk repairs, minor electrical repairs, ceiling tiles, patching a pothole, hanging a monitor for a classroom, whatever those things are, that's kind of the example of that work. Again, these are ground rules, but I think that's a good start for classifying them. Project. So work order becomes a project when the triage committee evaluates it and says, this is going to be more than 32 hours or $10,000 in materials. Why do we want to do that? Well, typically these types of things don't fall into the urgent and emergency categories, and therefore we can have a little bit more time to execute that work. Plus, we also need to evaluate, is this the best use of the money? Like I said, we have a limited budget. Obviously, if you're a paying customer, you kind of go to the front of the line a bit because you have your own money. If you're spending my money, I've got to prioritize it. So I'm sorry, that's kind of the way it rolls, but we got to make sure that we're spending the money wisely. And then the triage committee will look at these every week. They'll come in, they'll have a standing meeting, they'll evaluate the work orders, and that's the routine work orders. The urgent and emergency ones will get dealt with right away. But some examples of this work might be, I want my restroom renovated in this building. We're having drainage issues outside our building we need to have addressed. Building envelope, we've got windows that are leaking. The electrical panel that I talked about earlier. Big street repairs where instead of just a pothole, I've got to replace the whole panel or a whole street or whatever. You want a new building or you want an addition to your building. Those are the kind of things that get rolled into the project work orders. And we track that separately. We have a different metric for getting those accomplished. And the reason why is because every project is unique. It requires an assessment of the manpower or the labor to get it done, the cost. Maybe there's design, maybe there's planning. Maybe we don't even know what the problem is and we have to hire somebody to figure it out for us before we do a design and stuff. So the timeline is a lot different on these than it is on those routine, urgent, or emergency work orders. And so we're going to kind of separate them out a little bit. That way, you'll know when you put that work order in how it's classified, and then we will be able to manage those expectations and discussions about that project delivery separately than a work order. Okay, so it's kind of taking the shops, those guys, focusing on what they need to do, and then having a dedicated group to focus on project management. All right, and then deferred maintenance. So I don't know, anybody here ever heard of deferred maintenance? Yeah, some of you have, yeah. This is not a particularly pleasant discussion. Nobody likes deferred maintenance. And deferred maintenance is not a good thing. Deferred maintenance is usually comes when you don't have the money to fix it, or the fix is often so big that you would be better off replacing the building than doing the fix, right? So I talked about the residence hall with the catastrophic electric failure. Well, that's not why we replaced that residence hall, but it was kind of the death knell that ensured that we weren't going to not replace it. But sometimes you have a project that comes up that is so big that, you know, it just doesn't make economic sense to do it because that building isn't worth that much money anymore. And we need to find a better use of the university's resources than fixing something, putting good money after bad, right? So a couple of different reasons for that, and it's never a pleasant discussion. And then people say, well, your deferred maintenance is so big. Well, yeah, because we just have a lot of problems that we haven't been able to fix. So, but the good thing about this is that now instead of just, oh, we'll get to it and it becomes a deferred maintenance, we're making a conscious decision to defer the maintenance instead of it just getting deferred because we can't get to it. That's a big difference there. All right, so summarizing, here's what the call center or the work order categories look like. So you have the emergency, urgent, and routine. Those still go to the Fix-It call center. All your work order, work requests still go to Fix-It. The emergency and urgent are kind of dispatched at that time by the call center to the shops to address. The routine ones are still maybe sent to the shops, but they get a screening, right? The triage committee screens, so there's an overlap there. We're looking at all those work orders to make sure that, hey, you know what, this got sent to the shops, but this is really a project. Or maybe the shops got the work order and looked at it and said, no, this is too big for us to accomplish in the time frame we need. Let's look at the project, how we're going to execute this. So it goes back to triage and then gets reassigned. Then the project work orders, again, the timeline varies depending on the cost, complexity, and available budget. That's kind of the bottom line. Again, paying customers, you know, you come to me with money and we will talk because that's just the way it is. If you're an E&G customer, you're kind of lumped in with everybody else. I'm sorry. We try to do our best. And we will. If it's a no kidding issue that we can address, we will address it. But just understand that we all have the same budget. So that's just, I didn't make the rules, I just play the game. So, and then deferred. We make that conscious decision that investing this money in that building at this time doesn't make economic sense because we're going to tear the building down in 2 years. We don't want to put $2 million into that building. So what will we do? Well, we won't ignore the issue, right? If it's like an air handler that keeps breaking, we'll keep fixing it, but we're not going to replace it. Unless it fails catastrophically, then we probably will replace it with some temporary solution. We won't go in and do a complete overhaul of the HVAC system. So that's kind of how the deferred maintenance piece works. Any questions so far? Yes, ma'am.
In your application, you mentioned considerations for, dollar amount of the project and, as part of the urgency. You also have considerations for the type of space. For example, if there's a leak in a classroom where there are tiles falling down potentially on a student, that might be more urgent than a leak in an office or one person's.
Right, well, urgent is urgent, right? So the idea is that everything shouldn't be urgent, right? That's the goal. Everything shouldn't be an emergency. Right now, kind of everything is an emergency, right? Because we just really don't, oh, I need this fixed right now. Well, we send somebody over there, and somebody else calls up and says, I need this fixed right now, so we send somebody over there. So hopefully, what we do is we get to the point where emergencies are no kidding emergencies. Urgents are dealt with the same way, but we're not making routine work orders urgent, right? So if I've got a stained ceiling tile, and I know there's a leak up there, but it's just, it's not, it's aesthetics, it's not damage. Maybe that's a routine work order instead of an urgent work order. But if we have a leak in the office and a leak in a classroom, and they happen at the same time, my hope is that I've got sufficient resources to address both at the same time. Where it comes down to what you're talking about, it's going to be a discussion we'll have to have. I don't know that I can make a rule for every single situation, but my hope is that by doing this, we can spread out and reduce the likelihood of that situation arising at the same time. All right, so I like to think I have the ability to respond to two things like that at the same time with my staff. Jerry, I mean, we can, most of the time we can.
Yes, I had comments on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we deal with work orders that come in every day, I think what you're really referring to is, yes, we make the assessment on, the urgency of it.
Right.
And what you're talking about is responding to the one that's gonna have an impact on the greatest number of
Yeah,
people.
and I think the answer is, we try to do that, yes. Yeah. So. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
So you're talking about things including that or excludable, et cetera, like the underlying issue. At what point and how do you determine that, hey, this building keeps having an issue in the same way over and over again? And that just doesn't make sense for the university to put on the list for a real fix.
Okay, so I think you're driving towards the deferred maintenance question, where we have, the question is, if we have an overlying issue that keeps recurring, how do we determine whether or not we fix the underlying issue or just keep addressing the symptoms of that underlying issue? So I will say that right now, we don't currently have a good methodology for doing that, right? And it gets lost in the noise. So my best example of this is the repetitive cold calls I have every time we get a cold weather snap. We get so overwhelmed with, man, my room is cold, my office is cold, I got to send people out there. We get so overwhelmed with addressing the symptoms that we don't address the underlying issue, right? So the rigor of this process helps us to drive that. So it identifies, okay, we've been dealing with this issue for the last 3 years, and it just continues to be an issue. What are we doing to fix the problem? So, okay, now we ask that question, we go to get that answer, we bring somebody in. So like, one thing we started this year is I started forcing our HVAC group to bring in consultants or MEP contractors to take a holistic view of what's wrong with the building and find out what the issue is. So we do that. They come back and they say, oh, it's just a couple of things you need to tweak here, or more likely, given Murphy's Law, this is a $15 million fix, and the only way you're going to correct the situation is to replace your HVAC system and controls. Well, what they used to say when we were kids, knowing's half the battle. Yeah, it's half the battle, but it doesn't make anybody happy. It actually kind of makes it worse sometimes, because now you're depressed, because now you've got to come up with $15 million to fix it. Once we have the answer, though, we can prioritize that across the campus. So if you're in housing and you have that issue in 3 or 4 different residence halls, I can go to you and say, here's your problems, here's what the cost is to fix, and then you prioritize which one you want to fix first and where you want to put your resources. If you're in E&G space, I do the same thing. I look at, okay, here's my problems, here's how much they're going to cost, and then I weigh them against, okay, what's the kind of the return on investment here? Is it a building that we're going to tear down in 2 or 3 years? So does it make sense to invest the $15 million? Or, if this is a relatively new building, we're going to recapitalize it at some point, we're not going to tear it down. So yeah, it makes sense to invest that money then. Now that I go look for the resources. Do I always get those resources? No. Right now, we have a HEAF budget, which is to deal, with those kind of things. My total HEAF budget is about $12 million a year. So I have a building that's got a $15 million repair. I'm not going to be able to do it. I've got to bake water and steel to get what I am getting. So, but what it does do though, is it allows me to pick a strategic picture of what I can do with what I've got, what I need to do, and let the money people, the administration, the Board of Regents know how big the problem is, express to them what the impacts of the problem is, and hopefully they can find the resources to do those things. Okay, so, does that help answer the question? I know it doesn't give you the answer you want.
The further issue, pieces that I was asking, my real question was specifically about is there some way that you guys are going to identify that that's happening? Okay, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Maybe 10, 15 years ago, me and my next door neighbor kept calling hot, she kept calling cold. We didn't realize it until then I was like, y'all are connected, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so they kept going like
Right.
2 degrees difference, and then we decided, okay, well, we'll just deal with the 1 degree in the middle.
Yeah.
Right, but now that's 2 different rooms, but still that sort of thing should be able to be pulled from famous, where we say this is the room that we have an issue. Does that make sense?
Yes, and so we are starting, I mean, I don't want to say nobody did in the past, but we are looking at those things, and we are, analyzing the type of work that is coming in and looking for those sorts of issues. I will say that given what we're dealing with on the university, those are more common than not, and a lot of times the fixes are so drastic, right? So, because the design of the building, and I don't know what building you're in.
I didn't tell that, but that was.
Well, okay, that explains everything. So let me tell you about E. Let me tell you about E.
No, actually, y'all have fixed my room, but I think you
Well-
all fixed it because the VP is next to it, right?
That might be, that very well may be, but that's a great example of kind of what we're dealing with. So we've had those issues, we've brought somebody in and done a study to find out what the problems are, and that's the $15 million fix I was telling you about. That's it, that's the one, it's $15 million to fix that problem, right? And to give you an idea of what the source of the problem is, well, the building was built in 1927, 37, I don't know, it was one of the first buildings, and it's very old. At the time, it had 6 air handlers. The original 6 air handlers that were built at that time are still in the building. In the 70s, we put 6 more air handlers in there because I guess we started getting some computers and maybe people started liking air conditioning more, I don't know. So we've got 6 air handlers that were put in the 70s that are still there. The lifespan of an air handling unit is typically about 15 to 20 years. These are the original air handlers. Let's not even talk about the controller. So in that building, we have 2 or 3 different control systems, 4 different controls. So we've got all of these like big little issues that were corrected over the years, but the big fix was never done. So now kind of the chickens are coming home to roost, and we got to make those big decisions. And I have a feeling that somebody will find the money to fix that at some point. Because we're not going to tear down E. Coleman. I mean, let's be honest. We're not going to tear down E. Coleman. It's a very iconic building on campus. It's not going away anytime soon. So some of those decisions are easy to make. Now, go out to the EHLS building. There's nothing iconic about that building. We're not going to fight to save that building when the time comes, right? But now we got to find a place to put everybody that's in it before we tear it down, because they got to have a place to work. So those are the kind of things that go into the decision-making process. And sometimes they take longer than others because, you get somebody on board, like me, I came in a year and a half ago and excited, and I got all these great ideas, and then I'm here for 3 or 4 years, and then, I'm not saying I'm leaving, folks, don't read that into what I'm saying here, but that person leaves, and that effort kind of dies with them. What I'm trying to do is put in place a system, a program, so that it's independent of me, right? This is how we do things, this is how it's done. Doesn't matter if it's me in that seat or somebody else, or if we, change personnel. It's not personnel dependent, and that's been a lot of the problem. That's why I want to put this in place. That was a very lengthy answer. I apologize.
But one thing I want to add, we are taking all the work orders and we're putting those into a big matrix so we can tell what our problem buildings are, problem areas within the building,
Right.
whether it's mechanical or if it's occupant driven, like what you were talking about. If we don't have that data, we can't make those decisions.
Well, and let me-
we can go down into that, but we are.
Let me drive on one more point about that too. So the other great thing about this process is that when we get all those work orders from the same building where 2 people next to each other, we are now able to take all of those things and say, you know what, this is a bigger problem than just a work order or an urgent work order or whatever. It's a project. And it triggers that next step more quickly than the way it's been done in the past. So, all right. Yes?
You mentioned budget, and pardon me if I speak out of turn or if I'm ignorant, but I know when new buildings are built on campus, they set aside a certain percentage for public art. I'm assuming that's correct.
Yep.
Do we also, and if we don't, why don't we set aside a certain amount of money to put in an endowment for maintenance?
That's a very good question. It's a very good question. They don't do it. Now, if you're an auxiliaries customer, like housing or dining or campus rec, you do put aside a certain amount of the capital investment for that. If you're an E&G, it's not done that way. Why? I don't know. I think it's a good idea.
Is anybody in this room able to talk to somebody who can make that happen? Because we're building a lot of new buildings, and
Yeah.
20-year-old buildings are having issues for years and years that
Yeah.
get fixed but aren't fixed.
Yeah.
I'm part of one of those, so.
Yeah. No, I think it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? But I think the difference is those for the auxiliaries buildings, they have to actually pay for their buildings with revenues. So they have to have a pro forma and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's part of when we build a new building on the E&G administrative side, the state kind of pays for a lot of that, and it goes into. I mean, it's a good question. I'm happy to raise that. But yeah, I don't have a good reason why they don't, other than they just don't. So. Yes.
So, and sometimes we put in work orders, which our case is a little bit different because sometimes, if we put in a work order, to us it's urgent because we work baby hours.
Right.
For example, placing a work order for lights. So, for example, in one of our toddler classrooms, all of the lights were out in the bathroom. So it affects us as far as the children, moving the children to another classroom. For transitions that happen maybe 5 to 6 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
Within between 1.5 to 2 hours.
Right.
So that kind of upsets the routine, so I don't know, maybe I should say, with the children's learning centers, it's urgent.
Yeah.
Because if we can't see, we have to transfer
Right.
children to another class.
Well, so.
It takes a week.
Yeah, let me repeat for the video. So the question was, you're at the Child Development Center. When you put a work order in, it's often because it has to deal with the health and safety of the children, so it is urgent. So my response to that is, I don't know that necessarily who you are makes it urgent, is what the situation is that makes it urgent. So if you have a light out, just one, it's very difficult to say that's urgent or emergency, right? If you have all the lights out that is impacting your operation like you say it is, that's a different scenario. So when you call in the work order to fix it, I think that the easiest way is just say, hey, you have all the lights out, it's impacting our operation, this is how, and it'll get classified as an urgent work order. It's all about communicating to the people who are taking the call. And they want to make sure you get helped, believe me. That's their whole purpose in life, is to get your problem fixed. Thus the name Fix It, right? Catchy. That's really catchy. Yeah, but that's the whole idea, so that when you call in, explain what the situation is and why it's urgent, and we're not going to fight you on that. Yeah, we're not. I mean, I'm not going to tell you that. No, that's not urgent. I would be silly of me. I'm not the one who has to deal with the kids, right? That's a big deal, and you're dealing with accreditation issues and the state and everything else. I don't want to cause you problems there. So yeah, when you call that in, explain what the situation is, and then they will explain it to the shops. So believe me, Carl, he has kids. He doesn't want. I don't know if he has kids at the Child Development Center, but
Mine's 26.
yeah, but yeah, we all have kids. We want to make sure the kids are taken care of. So he'll get that call and he will reprioritize the effort accordingly. So if he's got some guy that's just changing light bulbs in a building just because there's some lights out or whatever, and he gets that call, he'll say, hey, drop what you're doing, grab the light bulbs, go over and fix this. It's as simple as that. Now, it will take some time. It's not going to be instantaneous response, But like I said, our goal is to respond immediately and have it fixed within 24 hours. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay. I've gone an hour. I know I don't want to. Okay.
This is an important topic.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on that? I've got a couple more slides, and I'll take more questions after. But yes.
Okay, I want to speak on something that she was saying. Okay, and she's with CLC that's like auxiliary. It's billable. Some of our crews, if they don't have a work order and they're still waiting on those work orders to be approved, then they will not go out with just an SR.
Okay.
And we have requested it.
Okay, so that's kind of a different situation. However, it's one that I think we can work with our customers to address. If there's, I don't want to solve the problem here, but I think we can solve that.
I just wanted to
Yeah,
bring it up to
yeah.
the attendance here because of the
Right.
simple point. Some
Right.
auxiliaries take longer than others to go ahead and approve their work
Right.
orders, and they're study calling back or emailing you guys like, we're not doing what we're supposed to do, or the crews are not doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
When all they're just waiting on one approval
Right.
to get it done. And,
Right.
you
So
know,
that, I mean, that does add to the process, but I think we can fix that. So,
If the DBA is not available though, it's nothing that we can do. Hey, I'm Carrie with Home Farm, how are you?
isn't it great everybody gets to meet face to face for a change?
Like, if our DBA is not available.
Yeah.
I've been known to text my DBA and say, I just put in 2 work orders, I need you to
Yeah.
approve them. And he'll text me back and say, I've got 17 in my queue.
Yeah.
Which 2?
Well-
So I think that that's hard, especially on a weekend or
All right.
something.
Well, I wasn't going to roll this part out yet.
I mean, I'd love to approve
There's a
my
lot
own,
more
but
to this,
it's
folks.
fair.
This is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just to get things started. I've got a vision for how this can get better, but yeah, yeah. If you're in the call center, raise your hand real quick.
Yes. Come on.
Raise your hands. I want everybody to know who you are. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, these are the folks that take the calls, and So one of my thoughts is, you know, we always set up SLAs with our customers every year. There's a way through the SLA process, I think, to establish a kind of a budget for urgent emergency call-outs to where if the DBA is not available, we can still respond. And if it's an emergency, we're not going to care. We're going to still respond. I mean, let's just put it that way. Urgent, maybe we need to have some discretion. But my thought is I think we can deal with that through the SLA process. You know, hey, I'm going to pay for 10 emergency calls. And that way, we just keep track. And if we need more, we can put more in. But it allows us to kind of respond to that. So,
when it's an SLA, yes, we go.
right, that's what I'm saying.
But we do have a lot of them that won't even.
No, I know.
The SLAs.
No, I know. There's a lot of stuff different about the SLAs. It's a process we're working on. So, anyway, work request process. I'm going to move on. So, we've kind of talked about it a little bit. That's kind of what the recent discussion was. A formal request is made through the centralized maintenance management system, which is famous, to report a need for repair, alteration, construction, etc. It's typically entered by the customer through Fix-It. 4 ways to fix it. Everybody knows what they are, right? You can text, you can email, you can enter it yourself through UH Access and call it in, right? If it's an emergency or urgent situation, I don't think I need to tell you this, but I'm going to just put out, call Fix-It, all right? If you put it in yourself or if you text it or email it, it may delay the response. So if it's an emergency or an urgent work request, call Fix-It. It's a starting process for any work order or project. Then we'll classify it, you know, again, maintenance or repair will be typically handled by the appropriate shop. Emergency and urgent work requests will still be routed by the call center to the appropriate responder. Routine work orders will be received and entered into the system and screened by the shops and the triage committee. The triage committee will screen all the routine work orders and confirm assignments to the shops as appropriate or assign it to planning, minor projects, or MIG. Typically doesn't go straight to capital projects because that's a very lengthy process. So I don't even know why I put that on there. But your request may be a capital project, but this is where it starts. Again, the thumb rule, the guideline, the kind of the general thought is 32 labor hours or $10,000 in materials, and will require planning and design. It's not an arbitrary number. I've used this in other places. It's kind of industry standard. Where this was driven by in my last job was by the federal government. If you know anything about federal contracting, construction is required to adhere to Davis-Bacon wage rates. Services are covered under the Service Wage Act. So 32 labor hours is that line of demarcation that determines whether it's construction or services. We can change that. We're not bound by that, but that's kind of where I came up with it. $10,000. I may adjust that a little bit downward because once it gets above $10,000, or once it gets above $5,000, the procurement of the materials becomes more challenging, right? So if I have to get a contractor, if I have to procure something, it becomes more complicated and more time consuming the higher the dollar value. So that's kind of where that came from. And then deferred maintenance decisions will be based on recommendations by the triage committee. They aren't the final arbiter of what gets deferred. There will be a discussion about it, and there's an appeals process. I mean, I don't say there's an appeals process, but basically my boss and his boss are going to be the final arbiters of what gets, deferred, and what doesn't. So because they control the money. Talked about the triage committee already and what they do. I don't think I need to cover that anymore. And what is this? This is, okay, yeah, so this kind of goes to how we're kind of tracking the metrics and separating out projects from maintenance and repair work orders, and our implementation timeline. So today we're talking about the kind of the rollout plan. We're going to do some training with our staff, complete the necessary adjustments to Famous and our facilities website to make sure that we're branding and advertising and everybody's aware. We'll do a news release to let everybody know when it's going live. The plan is to try to go live with this process starting on April 1st. And then we'll do a review. And we'll do more than just one review. I just didn't want to get too into details. But after a month, we'll take a look at how things have gone and what we can do to tweak and improve the process. And then I'm sure I'll be back in May?
Probably May, end of April.
End of April, May, to kind of talk about where we're on this. You'll see a lot of me over the next several meetings, I'm sure. Any other questions on this? Yes. Uh-huh. She's my best friend, by the way. So yeah, she's my best friend. I talk to her a couple times a day. Yeah. So yeah, I'll be glad to. I wasn't aware of that, but
Because if you reduce it and then she increases it, you're reducing for something.
yeah, and the only reason I would reduce it is because of that. So if they increase it, I would. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do is keep my shops guys from getting bogged down into a lot of extra stuff that's not feasible, and that's the whole idea behind this. So, but yeah, great comment. Yes, sir.
I've been coming to these meetings for about 10 years, and I apologize for my ignorance because I should probably know this, but I know that you and your colleagues use this term a lot. What the heck is ENG? It's never defined on any slide.
Okay,
Just
you
say
know what?
Not an auxiliary.
Yours is an auxiliary, yeah.
Okay, so E and G,
E and.
G, yeah, education and general administrative
Okay.
spaces. So what those are university assets that are funded by the state as part of the higher education mission, right? So if you're a university, your mission is to educate students. So if your facility is involved in the active education or administration of that process of students, you typically get funded by the state to build and maintain those facilities. And so we get a budget, It's allocated to all the universities. We unfortunately, unlike Texas A&M and UT, we don't get any of that good old oil money. So it's a very limited budget.
So the vast majority of our buildings are E and G.
Yes, yes. Auxiliaries is another kind of catch-all. It includes any revenue-generating activity that, that is done by the university. So, Carrie, I don't know if revenue is the right word, but.
I've been in the black every year.
Okay, excellent.
Not a little bit.
But campus rec, things that are paid by student fees, by the residence hall, whatever, not rent, but, whatever you pay to stay on campus. The dining, yeah, all that kind of stuff. They generate revenue, therefore, they kind of got to pay their own way. And they're not funded by the state. So like, and I think, I don't know if you guys get to use bonds. You guys get to use bonds to build stuff, or you got to use your, I don't even know how that works. Yeah, so, anyway, that's the difference.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
I think you should point out too that this is not a land grant university,
Right,
and so we don't have the same funding sources.
right,
I have to point that out to my students, other people like that, this is not a land grant university.
right, right.
And that makes a difference.
Yes, it makes a
Big difference.
a huge difference. Yeah, I mean, like a good friend of mine from college in the Navy has the same job I've got at University of Texas, Austin. He never complains to me about how much money he's got. I mean, yeah, I mean, his problems are completely different, right? His problem is, how do I spend all this money? Well, we're Navy buddies, so.
I should go back to history and read about that, because that's really the big crux of what
Right.
regulation's about.
And all it would take is some simple legislation signed by the governor to change it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's, it does make a big difference, so, yes.
I would like to ask that there be some kind of tracking for ADA compliance.
Okay.
I'm more sensitive to because I have some single family members that I take care of. But sometimes we only have one thing in a building that's ADA compliant for that specific area. Like on the public side of the building, we may only have one bathroom stall that's ADA accessible. So something like lock breaking we had in the last few months or something, that's a big priority to me because I realized I couldn't take care of my family member if I wasn't super familiar with the building, and that's the only bathroom I knew of. But most people aren't familiar with how big of a deal that can be. A lot of times people are so limited they can't necessarily quickly go to another building
Right.
because of their physical limitations. So things like problems with ramps or the push button opening of doors, the only stall in the building that's ADA compliant, I think should be risen to the level of urgency to influence that.
Sure.
Shut down.
Right. Well, and I will tell you, again, the system we have in place now, everything's urgent, so a lot of stuff gets lost in the noise. I will say that if we know, if Fix-It is made aware that is an ADA issue, it typically rises to the top of the list just below the life safety stuff, because we understand the importance of it, we understand the impact it has, particularly on our campus here, because a lot of these buildings were very old. They were built before a lot of the new requirements were put in place. So, back in the 30s, they didn't have any thought to the design and construction of a building to help people with wheelchairs or walkers or visual or physically impaired, right? They didn't think about that. So we've gone back and we've retrofitted some stuff, not everything. It is a very important thing. So I know we work closely with the Justin Dark Center. When an issue comes up, it rises to the top because we understand the importance of it. What I would recommend, and this is just in general, is that the more information that you provide to Fix-It, the better we are able to classify and get the work prioritized.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Part of the reason why I chose to see it this way is because also if everyone else is here that's also going to fix it, is thinking about that,
Right.
then it's more people making that kind of
Right. Yeah, so if you're calling in and you say, hey, I've got a toilet clogged in this restroom, and it's the only ADA toilet in the building, well, that's a different story than if it's just a regular, toilet or whatever. So, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you, and part of it is what we are told, right? If nobody tells us that it's the ADA toilet or it's the, whatever. I mean, typically door openers we know are important. We classify those, but I'm just trying to think of some of the examples that aren't. If we are aware of it, we will classify it and respond to it as accordingly. It's just, like I said, we get 4,300 a day. It's or 4,300 a month. It's a lot comes in, and sometimes the information that comes in isn't always is clear, and we don't know about it, so it doesn't get classified properly.
Sir,
Yes.
if we have continuous problems, like for example, a leaking CD or a leaking board, and it's just continuous, do we assume that you have that convert?
Well, this goes to the other part of my strategic plan for the department. One thing we've been working on over the last year and a half is our communication and feedback to our customers, right? So if you haven't personally put in the work order, don't assume that somebody else has. If you call up the call center, they will say, yeah, this has already been put in, because I do it all the time. And they're like, Mr. Benjamin, it's already in. And I'm like, all right, that's good. But that way you at least know somebody's working on it. If you assume that somebody else has put it in, that other people are probably doing the same thing and nobody puts the work order in, and then you guys are like, man, facility sucks. They're not doing a good job for us at all. Well, nobody's told us we had a problem, right? Now, if you did put the work order in, this is where I was talking about our improvements, is my expectation of my guys in my shops is when they go out to address a work order, they need to feedback to the customer. Now, that feedback comes in a lot of different ways. So we have leave behind. So like if we go into a dorm room or we go into an office or someplace where we know it's one person, we have a leave behind form that says, hey, I was here, here's what I did. If you have any questions, call, and here's our survey. Please fill out the survey. Please fill out the survey. Please, please, please fill out the survey. Good, bad, or otherwise. That's a good plug, right? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So that kind of gives the feedback. The other thing my folks are supposed to do is in the work order itself, they're supposed to put notes that says, went out, this is what I did, this is when I did it, and it's complete, or more work is required, here's what needs to be done. Maybe it's, well, I went out to look at it, thought it was a plumbing leak, but no, it's the air handler, chiller, whatever is leaking, so now it has to go to another shop for somebody to go out and do that repair. Because we really don't want, nothing against the general maintenance guys, but they're not HVAC guys, right? They don't work on HVAC equipment, so we don't want them necessarily working on somebody else's equipment. So the idea is, in the work order itself, the note's put there, and then theoretically, an email is sent to you when that's done that tells you your work order's still open or your work order's closed and here's what was done. We're still working on that, it's a work in progress, but that's the idea, is that we are communicating better with the people that are putting the work orders in so they know the status of it. You can always call the call center and they can find out as well. So if you didn't put the work order in, you just want to know, hey, this is a problem, is it already in? They'll tell you, and they can probably tell you what the status of it is as well. Does that answer your question? Okay. It's not a perfect system yet. We're working on ways to improve it. But all my guys know that their e-performance is based on how well they do this. So we're moving the culture towards being open in communication. Not everybody is a communicator like me, right? They're not comfortable talking to people. They just want to do their job, which is great. I want them to do their job, but I also want them to think about us in terms of more of a customer service organization, not just a maintenance and repair organization. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Well, I apologize for going so long, but
We got a late start. This is good. This is important information. Jeff, thank you so much for coming in, for sharing all of that, and now we had the question about what is E&G space, and so if anybody ever has any question about that, they can at least refer back to the slides or the conversations during this. Let's see. There's one here. I'm scrolling through.
I'm sorry, yeah, I've got
No,
a
that's
lot of
okay.
slides.
So that's the end of the piece that talks about the work orders. You're welcome to stay, but we are actually going to do a door prize. So you're kind of getting a feel of what your building coordinators get to experience every quarter. And I do want to remind, if anybody has questions that something is not getting repaired or they're concerned, part of the building coordinator program is that the building coordinator in your building is the person you can go to say, and I get these quite a bit, somebody's like frustrated, they feel like they're not getting a proper response. If you talk to your building coordinator, the building coordinator knows that my office is the escalation point, facilities communications. Doesn't mean you can't contact Mr. Benjamin or anybody else, but that's sort of our central receiving point is facilities communications. You can email me directly. What we will do what we can then to escalate it. Sometimes it maybe just got bogged down someplace or there's some additional information that's needed. So please just know you have multiple resources, at least within facilities and in your building coordinator. And if you ever need to know who your building coordinator is, there is a link on our facilities website that actually lists every primary and secondary building coordinator and their contact information for every single facility. So that's also a resource, and we update it regularly. So without further ado, does everybody get the little red ticket for the door prize? And you don't have to be a building coordinator to win a door prize. So did you get it? Make sure everybody has one. They mixed very well. Okay. Okay, so the number is 32799. Oh. And I want to point out, we support sustainability, and so all of our thank you gifts and giveaway things are useful, and they're, for the most part, 99.9% sustainable items as well. So we're going to go on into the portion that was separate from what Jeff shared. And again, like I said, y'all are more than welcome to stay because there may be some information, especially with Key Access Services. If a lot of you are the ones who are coordinating your keys for your department, and they are, Erica is going to talk about the upcoming key audit, and that impacts a lot of places. So let me introduce Erica Vasquez. She is, as of today, February 1st, she has been hired into a new position in my office. She is the program manager for the Key Access Services office. So this is her first day on the job. So let's welcome Erica.
I think I need a step stool. So I just wanted to take the time to reintroduce the Key Access Services Department. As most of y'all know, Roland retired back in August, and I started with KAS in April. So right when the key audit started last year, so I'm also new to it as well. So the department consists of myself, Erica Vasquez, Anna Sanchez, and Miss Penny Brungart, who's a part-time working retiree. She was formerly filling in at the lock shop for Mr. Richard Day, but she's back with us at Key Access Services. I didn't create pretty slides like Mr. Benjamin. And on the agenda, it says here about the lost or stolen key process, so I'll just briefly go over that. A report must be filed with UHPD for every lost or stolen key. KAS will not replace or process a request for a replacement key unless there's a case number on the comment section on the key request. The department will be notified anytime a key is lost or stolen, and each case will be reviewed by Mr. Malcolm Davis and Mr. David Oliver, and they'll decide if a rekey is necessary on that. I'm cold, I'm sorry. Can I put in a work order for that it's cold in here? Yeah, urgent. So the next thing, how do I go to the next?
You hit the air key.
And if y'all have any questions, feel free to call our office with that on the lost or stolen keys. So the annual audit will be the same date as last year, April 1st, and it's going to end on May 15th. So I'll be announcing the training dates. I'll have them closer to the audit date, the starting date, so that way it's kind of fresh in our minds. I'll send it out to the certifying signatories of the departments, and that way y'all can also, have the auditors that y'all would like to attend the trainings on that.
I think it goes to the building coordinators too, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
We'll communicate it out.
And so again, our department is in charge of maintaining the issuance of keys and the return of keys, among other things. We also send the duty roster that y'all get on Mondays and Fridays as well. So that's pretty much it.
Does anybody have any questions about the key audit that will be coming? It's been it's been interesting because we found a lot of keys that have been misplaced or lost, whatever. And that's really, the key audit is probably somewhat what launched this process. And so we've really developed a really, we hope, a very robust and sound key replacement process with tracking it and kind of keeping track of things. So, but that's all I have to say.
Okay. No, thank you. So again, any questions, just refer them to our office. A lot of, we work closely with the lock shop, so a lot of the times I don't have the answers and I need to go back to the lock shop to get them. So I appreciate everyone's patience. Thank you.
Yeah, so like Key Access Services, they don't cut keys. Lock Shop cuts the keys. And many of you may know that they had gotten behind. They sort of lost a lot of people. They've been working really hard to, I think, get caught up. And I know that because Erica she's a great customer service advocate, and she's in Key Access Services, she's gotten a lot of the phone calls and emails. And she's had to be the deliverer of the message that sometimes, we're trying to get to it, but we realize as customers that that can be frustrating. So we appreciate when you keep patience in mind. That's really appreciated. But I think things are much better. It's coming along. So we're going to talk just a little bit about the building coordinator program, and I have my colleague, Dr. Mukherjee, is going to come join me. Pardon me? I've got him. Okay. I'll enter in. Would you rather me do it? I'll do it. Okay, yeah, so just briefly, the building coordinator program really grew out of a need to help support the departmental mission, which is to help provide a physical environment that supports all activities on campus in a safe way and in a way that promotes education and success and all of the good things that people come to a college for. The program goal for the building coordinator is to help the university meet the facility needs, to help make sure that issues are addressed, to help decide when it needs to be deferred or if it's an urgent or an emergency. The building coordinator program has been, I think, pretty successful. We've had, it started in 2011. We started out, and every single facility on campus has a primary and a secondary building coordinator. They are our key contacts on campus. I communicate with y'all daily, I'm sure, multiple times daily. Sometimes it's just they need help, building coordinator needs help with finding information, or they can't tell the status of a work order. And so the program has kind of grown and developed over the years. The people who serve as building coordinators tend to be at an operational level, so that if they were to receive a call at 2 a.m. or a text at 2 a.m., they would know what to do. So if their building is, there was some sort of water leak, main water leak, and we need to get information out. A lot of y'all have gotten texts from me quite often, but it's designed to just make sure that we know what's going on in buildings and that the building coordinators can help communicate what we do as facilities.
Good morning, everybody. As Jackie mentioned, I'm Dr. Momita Mukherjee, and I oversee assessment and evaluation program for the entire Division of Administration and Finance. And I'm here to talk about, as Jackie already introduced you all, about the Building Coordinator Assessment Program. In fact, at this time, this is a division-wide mandate as well as a key initiative from our VP, Mr. Jim McShane, to review and evaluate the Building Coordinator Program. It's the current state of the program and going forward, how we can improve the program. So as Jackie gave you some introduction about what the program is and how it's going this far, I'm going to talk about some of the objectives that we are trying to assess, particularly what we are looking at and how we are going to evaluate the program. And as a process, what method we are trying to adopt. So I'm going to talk about the objectives. So first and foremost, a lot of y'all are building coordinators, I assume. Mm-hmm. This is my first meeting. This is my first time attending your meeting. So over here, y'all attend quarterly meetings, as well as y'all get feedback about different initiatives as well as different programs and how, as building coordinators, building administrators, y'all must be participating in it. Communication is a key thing for y'all, as well as the annual training that y'all receive. So these are some of the primary objectives that the Building Coordinator Program serves. From the evaluation perspective, first and foremost, we want to understand, since this Building Coordinator Program has been around since 2010, this far we haven't received any feedback about how the program is doing, what's the current state of the program, what are the ways how we can improve it. So our campus has basically grown exponentially in the past 10 years. We need some feedback on how we can grow this program. So some measures that we are trying to, some outcomes that we are trying to measure is basically, first and foremost, how building coordinators, they can be informed about matters and issues that impact building users through timely communication. Secondly, we are trying to assess awareness and involvement in the coordination of safety initiatives, as well as how the matters can be escalated and the concerns, user concerns can be voiced. As well as the third outcome that we are trying to measure is how to make improvements to the current state of the program. The method that we are going to adopt is, in the first phase, we are trying to benchmark against our peer institutions, and then in the second phase, we will be conducting some focus groups with building coordinators themselves, as well as building administrators, so that we can get some feedback about how we can improve the program. Here's a list of the peer institutions against whom we will be benchmarking. And here are some of the criteria based on the school characteristics of equal size. These are some of the characteristics against which we will benchmark. So we will look at total enrollment, size, percentage PIL, urban, rural, number of staff, full-time, part-time staff, faculty that we serve on a campus, commuter, total square footage, total number of facilities, Carnegie classification, as well as number of international students currently each campus is serving. Additional components of the Building Coordinator Program, all the institutions that we are going to benchmark against, they already have an existing Building Coordinator Program. So here's a list of items that we identified as benchmarking items for our program. And I'm not going to go through the entire list. So in the second phase, so what we will do, like the data we collect from the benchmarking effort, we will utilize that information to formulate our questions, along with some questions that we want to get feedback on from y'all. So we will be conducting focus groups. So here's some information about the focus groups. Pretty soon you'll see some recruitment emails about the focus groups, which will tentatively be conducted in February, early March, late February, early March. So we are planning to conduct at least 4 to 5 focus groups with building coordinators, and participation is completely voluntary in the focus groups. We all will receive a recruitment email in which there will be a doodle poll link. If you're interested in participating in the focus group, as well as want to share your feedback with us about how we can improve the program, if you have some concerns that you want to voice, y'all can participate in the focus groups. It's open to everybody. Anybody can participate in the focus group. We are looking at a time commitment of an hour to max 90 minutes. Usually a focus group range between an hour to 90 minutes. Each focus group will have 6 to 8 participants, and basically you'll come share feedback with us in the focus groups. After the focus groups, we will be utilizing the information that you share with us, we'll be transcribing the information, and we'll be looking for some commonalities, some common themes that emerge out of that, out of your interviews, and then we'll be looking at some common issues that are emerging, and then we'll utilize that information to report back and develop our program. So here's some proposed use of results. First and foremost, we'll come up with some recommendations and action items that emerge out of that data that we get from here, as well as from the benchmarking. Then incorporate that data to adjust program objectives, the ones that we outlined previously in this presentation. And based on the program analyses of the institutional benchmarking, which we are already currently doing, incorporate key features into the current building coordinator program. We will, based on the data, the feedback that we receive from you from the focus group, as well as the benchmarking effort that we have initiated, we will reassess and update the current building coordinator program, the MAP, as well, which is scheduled for August 2019 review process, and finally some action items that will translate into some action items that you'll see in your program. Once the entire process is completed, we will we'll present our report to Mr. McShane as well as executive leadership, and then moving forward from there, we'll see how we can incorporate the changes into the program. And Jackie is my key liaison in the entire process. She is a core member of the ANF Cares assessment team, and this is the third cycle of assessment that we are participating in. She has already participated in the previous two assessment cycles that we did over 2016 and 2017. So this is our third one, and we are pretty excited. So going forward, I want to wrap up my presentation with this information that pretty soon you all will be seeing some recruitment emails coming through about participating in focus group for building coordinators. And I'm willing to take any questions that you all have about the study. No questions?
No
Thank
questions?
you.
All righty, thank you, thank you. Give me a second here. Let me get back, I'm sorry, I'm out of sync here, just give me a moment. So it looks like we're ready for another door prize. So if you'll bring up the little thing. I think we're going to wrap up on time, so we're good to go. And this is Destiny Holiday. She's a new face in our office. She's working with me on all of the communications, and building coordinator program is part of it. And she's a just recent U of H graduate student. So we're very happy to have her. And so let me go ahead and do this. So you may see emails from myself or Destiny or Carla, just FYI. The number is 32796. $32796. Oh, that's the lucky table. I did shake them up, I assure you. All right, we can just leave this here, yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to touch briefly. This says project evaluation forms, but it's not just about projects, it's about evaluation forms. Jeff touched on it, and he said, please share any of your feelings, comments, problems, the good, good, bad, and ugly? Good, bad, and ugly. We don't care. We want to hear it. At the end, we have a work order study or survey that at the end of your work order, when it is completed, you should be getting an email that says it's completed. Right after that, you then get the survey request form we want you to fill out. It's very short, I think maybe 4 or 5 questions. And we do act on all of that. And so of interest, when we broke the 2 emails up, like we have the one that tells you it's complete and then a separate survey one, our responses doubled, which was very valuable and very helpful. You can also go, I think it's on your, when you log into Famous, there should be a tab at the top that says Customer Comments and Concerns. That's another way you can access just sending us information. If you're involved in a capital campaign, your building is, then, or your department, you may get some other evaluations that are more construction related. But we're trying to sort of hit all of the key points. We want to hear from you, and you are certainly welcome to always, again, email your building coordinator. You can always email you can email me, you can email Facilities Communications. You know, the only way we can fix things if there's problems is for you to let us know. And you can certainly always contact Fix-It and say there's an issue, because Carla is not only working with me on the outage communication, she's also the supervisor and manager of Fix-It Call Center, which reports to me. And so we've tried to kind of open up as many venues as possible for your avenues for you to let us know when there's an issue. And then sometimes we get reports from central media because someone has posted something on the U of H Twitter feed. And anytime it has anything to do with any kind of a facilities-related issue, they send it forward to me. So we get comments and information from all sides, but we're happy about that. We touched on the focus groups. As Momita said, we've got the recruitment email that's going to be coming out asking if you would be interested in participating. We're going to plan them starting the week of February 18th. There may be some that are sort of around the noon hour, and so my plan is to give you a light lunch or in the afternoon, not too late in the afternoon because I know people have departure times. And again, anything you can help provide to us, any information you can help give. Those of y'all who have been with the program forever, we've had the program for a long time, and when it came time for us to do our next initiative, as she touched on for our department and from an assessment perspective, the building coordinator program was something that I get a lot of, comments from y'all, but we wanted to formalize it, and if there are things that we need to improve on, things you love, and the benchmarking also helps kind of let us know, because interestingly, there are other schools that have, if it's not called a building coordinator program, which many of them are, they have facility liaisons, but most programs nowadays seem to have kind of boots on the ground, people in the buildings or on campus, and so that, we want to be able to touch into that. And I think, we're going to do one more door prize. We just got a lot of door prizes here. We normally give 3, and they're broken up a little bit differently, but this time was a little different. So I shook it up really well, and if it's somebody from that table, I don't know. 32810, 810, 32810. Oh, good. Before we adjourn, I don't know that I really had any other announcements. We have added a lot of new faces to facilities, some in some leadership roles, and so we do try to get information out to y'all, just who, the name and the face. One thing I did want to touch on is, the billing rates have changed for 2019, and they're slated to have some changes in 2020. It's on our billing rates site on our website, and I apologize, I didn't come prepared with what that is, but if you just type in the URL or the University Searchline billing rates, it should pull up our site. But 2019, obviously, those are the billing rates for all of the shops. We're using that now. The proposed 2021 is up. Those may get tweaked, but as soon as I have that information, and I'm hoping to have that maybe by next week, I can let everybody know, just so if there's any adjustments, then everybody kind of knows about it earlier than I think last year, because that caused some concerns, especially with our auxiliaries, but for everybody. So. Yes. So that's why I just wanted to let you know that, so Al Rajan, who is our Executive Director for Business Operations, has been working on that, and that's one of the things I was working with him, and so my goal will be to get it out to y'all, like I said, I think by next week we can get something out. Go ahead, yeah, sure.
So along that lines, this is more for the auxiliaries customers. I'm working with Al Rajan. You should be contacted here in the next few days for us to go over, and I'll see a lot of people have already left, the SLAs. I'm trying to improve the process a little bit this year. I'm working with my staff to actually identify the scopes of work, so everybody agrees to the scopes of work before you get something, and then you go budget for it and everything else. I want to give you the opportunity to tweak that, adjust it. so that at the end of the day, everybody knows exactly what service levels they're getting in what areas. And we should be setting those meetings up here in the next couple weeks.
And just be watching, so if you happen to be engaged in the service level agreement, a service level agreement with our department, as he said, we'll be contacting you. Also, anytime you want, if there's an issue that you need someone to come visit you about, that you feel like is not being addressed, either myself or Caller or Destiny, we will go sit down one-on-one with you. If it's a problem in your building, we're happy to help. That's just another kind of service that we're trying to offer, is a little bit more personalized process, I think, and it helps. It helps me because then I kind of get to know the issues that y'all have in your building so that we can help advocate. I think that's everything I have. I can't think of anything else. Thank you for your patience. Thank you. Actually, we're getting out a little bit early. Thank you for all of the non-building coordinators who stuck around to kind of hear what we do. You're welcome to come to a building coordinator meeting anytime you want. We do have a listserv, so the building coordinator have their own listserv. But we always have very interested people who want to be kept abreast of what's going on. So we have something called the BC Partners listserv that we can add you to. You will get regular notifications if you want more information about outages. So let me know. There's a way we can help communicate with everybody that wants to know more about what we do and how we can help y'all. So without further ado, 10 minutes early, thank y'all for coming. Have a beautiful weekend, and we'll see you in 3 months.